you tell someone you don't want them to be in your wedding? How do you do that? Hey girl, it's me, Kim, the hostess with the mostest. Because girl, guess what I'm here to do? Help you plan your big day. Now, here's a topic that most people don't want to talk about because it's uncomfortable. But here's the topic. You gotta have it. It's necessary. And sometimes you just don't know how to navigate. So what I'm gonna do, like I always do, help you take the chaos out of wedding planning. So let's get into it. So if you're new to my YouTube channel, my name is Kim and I'm the hostess with the mostest. I come from a long line of party planning people. I planned my first event on a playground for a friend who was moving away in elementary school. Well, since then, I've gone from planning juice box parties to over-the-top events for many clients. And so what do I love to do? Again, take the chaos out of wedding planning. So let's get into this topic today, which is one that is very uncomfortable but necessary. And unfortunately, when you're planning your wedding, sometimes you have to make hard decisions and talk about things that are very uncomfortable. So I'm here to give you some tips and some best practices so you can make this process seamless without hurting people's feelings and making them feel unwanted, and so you don't have any drama associated with it. So let's get into how to tell someone you don't want them to be in your wedding. So let's be honest. The first thing is you have to have the conversation. And at the end of the day, you just can't have everyone in your wedding. You may come from a large family. You may have sorority sisters. You may have coworkers. You have elementary school, junior high, high school, college friends. You have all of these extended family and friends. And you're just like, what am I doing here? Why do I have to make this decision? And I've done weddings where the wedding party was 1 people, 2 people, up to 25 people, and it looked like a choir behind the bride and the groom. So if you're not wanting that, you do have to have those conversations. Sometimes it has nothing to do with numbers. Maybe you've grown apart from that person, and sometimes you're just putting them in out of loyalty, but you're really not close to them. Or maybe you think they won't get along with the rest of the wedding party, or whatever the reason is. It's a conversation that needs to take place. So it's not an easy topic, but it's necessary. And so let's just get into it a little bit deeper. So let's talk about how you can navigate through that process without looking like a bridezilla, but you still have to have the conversation, okay? So when you decide, who you're gonna have in your wedding party, you wanna pick people who you're close to. You wanna have people who have your best interests at heart. You want people who are gonna celebrate you and champion and be there for you. And sometimes some personalities or some people just are not gonna be there for you. Sometimes it's a budget thing. You just can't afford to have that many people, because if you have a choir as your wedding party, you gotta have flowers for all those people. You have to have transportation if you're going from one location to another, from the prep location or a church or a mosque or whatever to a reception venue. You got to deal with all of that, and it's a lot, and it costs you more, and it takes away from your guest count. So you do have to include your wedding party when you're creating your guest count with your venue. So if you have 30 people in your wedding party, you've already taken 30 people away from your guest count. So if you're trying to have something intimate, having a huge wedding party is not the way to go. So you definitely want to have those conversations. And unfortunately, it's not easy. So you're sometimes going to have to blame it on some other things. And unfortunately, it just has to be done. But there's a big reason why you have to have that conversation too. You need to be honest with yourself. Why are you not wanting this person to be a part of your wedding? I gave some examples before, but what's the real deep-rooted reason why? And that's when you need to have the tough conversation. You and your significant other, your fiance, you need to have a discussion when deciding on the people you want to have in your wedding. Just like when you're just trying to decide on a godchild for your children, or if you're trying to decide if you want to let someone watch your children or watch your pet, all those things go into why you make a decision on choosing certain people to be in certain parts of your life, certain rites of passage by your side. So have a deep conversation, soul search, and find out what's the real reason. If it's not budget, if it's not the size of the wedding party, if it's not, you have family dynamics, like you have cousins that you have to include, or traditions and things of that sort. Really have a conversation of why you're choosing not to include this person in your wedding, and be honest with yourself. Then the next thing to do is how to approach the situation. So how do you approach that tough conversation? At the end of the day, just remember, it still has to be done. So here's how you approach it. The first thing to do is not to do it in a public place. You know, if you think the person's get that outrageous, probably not a public place. I would do it somewhere intimate. And if you decide a public place, let it be off into the side, you know, a booth where you can have privacy. You don't want to do it via email. You don't want to do it through another person, because the conversation and the message is going to be skewed. It's not going to come from you personally, and it's going to be mixed up in a big old mess. And you don't want to do it on social media or via text. That's tacky, it's cheesy, it's not personable. And, you know, feelings are misconstrued when people don't have the facial expression there. They can't hear the inflection in your voice and the compassion. A text takes that away, and people draw conclusions, and then feelings are hurt, and now you're having to repair that, or a relationship is damaged. Because at the end of the day, weddings should be a special time where people are making the best decisions. Let's just really talk about it. You know, sometimes people act the worst when they should act the best. And that's usually a wedding, birth of a child, funerals, you know, any rite of passage or promotion on the job, you buy a new home, a new car, envy, jealousy, all those things come out. So when you're trying to communicate with someone and tell them that you don't want them to be a part of your wedding, doing it via text, a third party, you know, an email is not going to address the issue. You need to hit it head on, because again, weddings are an emotional time, good and bad, good and bad. But at the end of the day, you still need to have that conversation. People should know that you're being honest with them. And in most cases, when you lay it out plainly and you're honest about it, people will respect it. And, you know, even if their feelings a little bit hurt, they can take it a lot better when you're being honest with them. So, you know, again, during a rite of passage, people act the worst sometimes when they should act the best. And it shouldn't come from you. You should be on your best behavior. Now, if the person doesn't receive it, then there is really nothing you can do about it. But you still have to have the conversation and let people know, look, you know, here's why I can't have you in my wedding. But I still love you. And then here's another thing, what to say and what not to say. You want to be personable, but you don't want to be personable. And what I mean by that is you want to be fair in your conversation. You don't want to poke at people, go below the belt, or do things that are mean and nasty. So if you pick a dress that's not complimentary to everybody, and this is somebody you really, really love, then you have to have that conversation that you chose a dress over them. And sometimes the brides are picking dresses where you can change out the tops and different things. So I hear a lot of times brides will say things like, oh, I didn't pick her because she can't fit the dress. And unfortunately, if that's your friend, don't pick a dress that they can't wear. Make them a, you know, maid of honor, matron of honor, honorary bridesmaid, but still include them. Maybe just a different fabric, different top, but, you know, give that option to your wedding party. A lot of the dress designers today offer great options where you don't have to make people feel uncomfortable about their body type, you know. Now, in some situations, it may just not be anything you can accommodate if there is an issue like that. I would say have an honest conversation, but don't get personal with it. You know, try to be as nice as possible about it. Don't say things like, well, we're not close as we used to be. You know, they weren't, if you were in their wedding and now you're getting married and you're like, but we're not close, or you're harboring some ill feelings about something in the past, you know, address that, but don't make it personal and make it seem like it's them and it's really you and it's something that's bothering you that you never address. So address it, and then, you know, if it doesn't work out, then you know that person doesn't need to be in it. But address it first. You know, be fair. Don't hit below the belt, and don't make it personal when it doesn't have to be. You know, just be fair about your conversation and be honest about it. And don't use words that are judgy, that are rude and offensive when telling somebody why you don't want them in a wedding. Because if it's that bad, then you probably don't need to have them in a wedding anyway. If you feel that way about a person and you have to go there, then why are you considering them to begin with? I'm just saying. Okay. You know, if you have to have that conversation, just say, I'm just glad to have you a part of the day, and I still want to include you. So another way to include someone without having a big wedding party. And here's an example. I've been married twice. My first wedding was my parents' wedding. It was like my big fat Greek wedding. It was so large. It was so big. It was ridiculous. I had about 500 guests, and it wasn't a cultural thing. It was just living in New Orleans, knowing everybody. Second time around, I enjoyed the day. It was a great time. I remembered the day. I wasn't like a deer in headlights. I was marrying my best friend. And second of all, we both had been married before. We didn't want to have a huge wedding party. It was in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. And I didn't want a lot of people in the wedding. I didn't want to have a huge wedding party. And I thought it was unfair to ask people to pay to be in a wedding again after so much money had been spent on my first wedding. So that was one of the reasons why I didn't have a big wedding party. But at the end of the day, I feel like you need to have the conversation, and if people are close to you, can still include them. Managing those expectations. If you're not going to put people in the wedding, you can't then expect them to host a bridal shower for you and you're not including them. It's not their responsibility at that point. But you can do things like honorary bridesmaids and bridesmaids. Limit your maid or matron of honor to 1 or 2 people. It could be a sibling or a very best friend, and then everybody else can be honorary. So you can have them wear the colors, pick their own dress. You can have a corsage maid or just have them in reserved seating. They don't necessarily have to go down the aisle or walk up, but they can go out the recessional when the wedding is over. You can have specialized seating for them. You can do little things. You can still have a bridesmaid luncheon and include them, but you don't have to have all the big wedding party as a part of the pomp and circumstance. So there's a lot of things you can do to be creative. So honorary bridesmaids, honorary best man, honorary groomsmen. There are a lot of things you can do to include people without having to exclude people. So you can do simple things. Like I said, include them in when you go dress shopping for your dress. Let them come along with you if you want to go do a spa day, and just honor them and being there in their presence, and that you're thankful and grateful that they're happy for you, especially if they're supportive and still wanting to do those bridesmaid duties. Just have an honest conversation and include them, but maybe don't have those expectations, but you can't have those expectations of them if you're not including them, but just be fair and still honor them in some way as being your friend, but not necessarily an official duty and or including them in the pomp and circumstance of the ceremony and the reception. That's an easy way to manage that without hurting feelings or getting your own feelings hurt. And here's another thing. You got to be clear with your boundaries. If you decided that you're not going to have a wedding party, a big wedding party, don't let manipulation and guilt play into it. If you've laid out real reasons and you were honest with your feelings and it was a decision made, because sometimes one person may say, look, I only have 2 people I want in a wedding, and you may have 10 people. It doesn't make sense. Now, you don't have to have even side bridesmaids, even side groomsmen, but you don't want to have 20 bridesmaids and 2 groomsmen. So that's an easy fix. Hey, my spouse, my significant other only has 2 on his or her side. I'm only having 2 on my side, and set those boundaries and really, really stick to them. Don't let interference of family and friends tell you, oh, you need to have this many people. Remember, at the end of the day, even if family and friends are contributing to the wedding, you still want to set those boundaries and let people know this is not what I want. This is not what I want for my big day. This is what me and my fiance have decided, and you need to stick to it. Be firm in it. You don't have to be ugly. You don't have to be nasty. You don't have to fall out, but it is your day. And at the end of the day, you have the right to decide that you don't want 100 people in your wedding. And it's just that simple. So stick to it. Remember, cooler heads prevail. When tempers flare, step away. You can always come back to it. You don't have to do everything as soon as you get engaged, but have those conversations. Make it a fun process. Make it a beautiful process. And those who love you will understand. They will support you. And those who don't, guess you have to see it on the ground. They don't even have to be invited to the wedding. Be very clear. It's your day. So being upset and letting people agitate you is not the way to go. So think about it. Make the best decision for you and your significant other. And remember, it's your day. Because girl, what? You can plan it. If you've enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and follow us for more DIY wedding tips and best practices for planning your special day. Because guess what, girl? You can plan it. Follow us on all social media platforms. See you next time. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe at YouTube at Girl, You Can Plan It. See you next time.